The stars had watched in silence for 3 centuries as humanity spread across the galaxy like wildfire, claiming worlds with the audacity that only their species possessed. But when the Zarathi Collective finally decided to extinguish that flame, they chose to start with Kepler 442b, a thriving human colony of 12 million souls. Admiral Zexthol's mandibles clicked with satisfaction as he observed the smoldering remains of New Shanghai from his flagship's observation deck. The orbital bombardment had been swift, surgical, and absolute. No human structure remained intact. No human life signs registered on their sensors. The message would be clear to the rest of their expanding species. The galaxy belonged to the Zarathi now. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, long-range sensors detect no human vessels in this system. The colony ship that brought them here departed decades ago. This world is now ours for claiming. Zexthol's forearms gestured in the traditional Zarathi symbol of victory. Excellent. Begin deploying the colonization pods. This world will serve as our forward base for the next phase of human elimination. But the Zarathi had made a fundamental error in their calculations. They had assumed, like so many other species before them, that humans were just another conquest-driven race. Aggressive, yes, but ultimately conventional in their warfare and predictable in their responses. They had never heard of Sarah Chen. 3 months after the massacre at Kepler 442b, the Zarathi colony was thriving. Crystalline structures rose from the ashes of human cities, and Zarathi younglings played in parks where human children had once laughed. Zexthol had been promoted to sector commander and was overseeing the construction of a massive fleet yard in the system's outer asteroid belt. That's when the ghost ship appeared. It dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, a sleek black vessel unlike any in the human naval registry. Its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and strange geometrical patterns covered its surface like scars. Most unsettling of all, it was completely silent on all communication frequencies. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself or be destroyed," Zexthol transmitted from his command center on the planet's surface. The response came not in words but in action. The ghost ship opened fire with weapons that defied Zarathi understanding. Instead of energy beams or projectiles, it launched what appeared to be metallic spores that struck Zarathi vessels and began growing. Within minutes, entire destroyers were consumed by rapidly expanding metal organisms that converted their hulls into something else entirely. "What are these weapons?" Zexthol's aide chittered in terror as they watched their orbital defense fleet being systematically converted rather than destroyed. "They're not weapons," came a voice from the ship, a human voice, female, speaking perfect Zarathi. "They're employees." The ghost ship descended through the atmosphere like a falling star, its converted fleet following behind. As it approached the main Zarathi city, Zexthol could see that what he had thought were weapon strikes were actually some form of mechanical infection. The destroyed ships hadn't been destroyed at all. They had been transformed into something new, something that looked disturbingly organic despite being clearly technological. "I am Sarah Chen," the voice continued as the ship settled onto the landing platform where Zexthol's own flagship had once rested. "Former Queen of Kepler 442b, former human, current employer of the deceased." The ship's airlock hissed open, and what emerged made even the battle-hardened Zarathi commander step backward in shock. She had been human once, that much was clear from her basic skeletal structure. But death and resurrection had changed her in fundamental ways. Her skin was pale as moonlight and seemed to flow like liquid mercury. Her eyes were solid black, and when she moved, she left no footprints, as if she wasn't entirely present in their reality. Behind her came her crew, or what had once been her crew. Humans, Zarathi. Even members of species Zexthol didn't recognize, all bearing the same deathly pallor and impossible grace. They moved in perfect synchronization, their eyes fixed on some distant point beyond the visible spectrum. "You killed my people," Sarah Chen said, and her voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "All 12 million of them. Men, women, children. My subjects. My responsibility." Zexthol raised his weapon, but his arm refused to obey. Looking down, he saw that his own flesh had begun to take on a metallic sheen. The same infection that had claimed his fleet was now claiming his body. "We were defending our territory," he managed to choke out. "And I am defending the dead," she replied. "Do you know what happens to consciousness when the body dies but the quantum patterns remain intact?" Do you know what technologies exist beyond the edge of explored space in the dark between galaxies, where things that should not be make their homes? The transformation was accelerating now. Saath could feel his thoughts becoming clearer, colder. He understood now what had happened to Sarah Chen and her people. They hadn't simply died in the bombardment. They had been caught in the moment of death and given a choice. I offered them eternal service, Sarah continued, watching his transformation with something that might have been compassion. I offered them the chance to ensure that what happened to them would never happen to others. They accepted. Around the city, every Zarathi was undergoing the same change. Not death, something far more profound. They were being recruited. "Welcome to the fleet, Admiral," Sarah Chen said as Saath's transformation completed, and he found himself standing straighter, thinking clearer, and filled with purpose he had never known in life. "You have experience with orbital bombardment. We'll need that skill set." As the newly converted Zarathi joined her ever-growing armada of the resurrected, Sarah Chen turned her black eyes toward the stars. Somewhere out there, other species were making the same mistake the Zarathi had made, assuming that death was an ending rather than a recruitment opportunity. She had eternity to teach them otherwise. The Ghost Fleet lifted off from Kepler 442b, leaving behind a world that was no longer Zarathi, no longer human, but something entirely new. And in the vacuum of space, their converted vessels began broadcasting a simple message to every inhabited system within range. "The Queen has returned. Join willingly or join eventually, but you will join." Humanity had always been known for their refusal to accept defeat, but Sarah Chen had taken that refusal to its logical, terrifying conclusion. Death itself had become just another enemy to conquer.